Morning, everyone. We're going to discuss a vote in the House of Lords last night because it's quite interesting. So there was, let me forget the exact name of it, Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. What it actually was allowing house builders to, well, not so much to pollute rivers, but not pay for dealing with the pollution, if you see what I mean. So, and the Tories was claiming that this was going to be part of a house building program. Now, it's a complete nonsense for a start because just under a year ago, when Rishi Sunak was a new prime minister, there was supposed to be legislation passing through Parliament to force house building targets on local authorities, and he pulled them. That's why there's not enough house building going on, because they've not had housing targets. So what's happened is, so then they announced, and it wasn't a proper bill. It hadn't gone through the Commons. That's the other thing. MPs haven't voted for this. And so it went to the House of Lords last night and it was defeated because all it is it's a way of allowing house builders to make more profit. That's all it is. It doesn't help them get planning permission. In fact, there's a Tory today saying, oh, these houses already have planning permission. Now they won't go ahead. It's like, if they've already got planning permission, they can go ahead. If they don't go ahead, it's because the builders are not going ahead with it, right? But I want to explain, and the other thing is the Tories are now going, oh, this is Labour blocking houses, Labour blocking house building, Labour blocking house building. And I want to draw your attention to a little while ago. Do you remember with the Public Order Bill? And there was a similar thing led by a similar peer in the House of Lords, Jenny Jones of the Green Party. And there were calls then for Labour in the House of Lords to block that. And I said at the time, the reason why they won't is because of, thanks to the antics of people like Just Stop Oil, there was public support for the Public Order Bill, which there might not otherwise have been. And if Labour had have blocked it, first of all, nothing would have happened because the Tories would have just rammed it through anyway. But secondly, the Conservatives would have come out the very next day saying Labour are supporting people blocking the roads and stopping you getting to work. Right? And then this is the exact same situation. The Tories today, they're absolutely going for it. Labour are blocking houses. Labour are blocking houses. So you think to yourself, so what's the difference? Why did Labour block their bill last night, but they wouldn't block the Public Order Bill? The difference is public support. The public know that this is just a bill to increase pollution, that it's not actually increasing the number of houses. I've got a little clip here from the Times. This is their front page today, or part of it. Labour defeats Gove's plan for thousands of new homes. You say, oh, so the Times are also trying to plug this as Labour trying to block the homes. But I'll point something out here. This is the Times. The Times is read by people who already own their own homes. People who already own their own homes and buy the Times don't want new houses anyway, so they don't care. So that's a pointless headline. The other thing I'll point out, little graphic underneath. This is the first of 3 tweets from Simon Clarke yesterday, who is a Tory MP. I think he's from Middlesbrough. So look, I wanted to look at, but I'll go through the other tweets as well, but I want to look at this first tweet. So it says, this is a terrible decision from Labour. This is yesterday. This is when they announced they were going to block it. So they hadn't actually blocked it by then, but this is a terrible decision from Labour and one they will live to regret if they win the election. No, they won't. 100,000 homes with planning permission are being blocked by this EU legacy ruling. When the real polluters are water companies stroke farming. Well, his party can do something about water companies because they regulate them. And he's blaming farmers as well. But I'll tell you what I found quite incredible about this tweet. Look at what he's tweeted. He's tweeted an article from the Times where, look at the picture, shows river pollution. Look at the headline. Government faces defeat on ditching river pollution rules. So he's linked an article that says they were trying to ditch river pollution rules. And that is why Labour were able to block it, because they know that the public know that that's what it's about. This absolute steaming tit of an MP has actually drawn attention to it. And then he says here, it's his second tweet, but you can't, I've not put it on the screen, but his second tweet says, the government is really clear environmental protections will not be downgraded. People can see over the last few years that river pollution, sea pollution, lake pollution has gone through the roof. They know that. There's no hiding that. So how are you going to believe a government saying that they're being really clear that environmental protections won't be downgraded when they very obviously have been downgraded? And but then he says, in fact, funding to tackle nutrient pollution will be doubled. Yeah, that is because their plan was to stop private house builders having to cover the cost and the taxpayer cover the cost as well. Sorry, I'm just going to pick on one comment here because someone's just said, sorry, Potato Face, you've just said a stupid thing. I am going to call it out, I'm afraid. Just cancel my Labour membership due to Starmer article, RE-EU migrants. I'll still vote for them, no other option. They're not having my money, though. Right. I don't know. First of all, I will just say whatever article you've read is written by a Tory. The second thing is I really don't understand what the objection would be, because Labour have said this, Starmer has said this week what Labour's policy has been for a year, which is they're going to set up safe routes and they're going to work with other countries to have something like the Dublin Agreement again, and they're going to tackle criminal people smuggling gangs. All right. That's what they've been saying for a year. I really don't understand what would be wrong with that, and also what would there suddenly be wrong with it, because it's the same policy they've had for a year. It's just that he's starting to do it now, because he's talking to Macron next week, Trudeau, Biden. But there we go. Anyway, right, on to some relevant comments for this one. Peter saying, planning permission lasts for 3 years, I think. If you do not start the building, time lapses and you must reapply. Yes, indeed. There's been a lot of that as well. That's why Tories, when they've been trying to boast recently that house buildings on the increase, like, oh, there's more house building than under Labour. It's like, no, there isn't, mate. Because they're counting housing starts, not housing completions. If you count housing completions, no, Labour were building more houses. Surprise, surprise. And then Skylar Jones saying, I don't get it. Keeping the rivers clean versus building houses. Can someone explain why the Tories have set it up so that we can't have both? Why are Tories so damn mean and dirty? Because it's all about, for them, it's all about private profits. That's all it's about. Private profits. You know, like Simon Clark's saying here, funding to tackle nutrient pollution will be doubled. So what he's saying is the taxpayer should pay for this and allow the house builders to make greater profits. He's not talking about, oh, this will allow the price of the house to come down. Even that wouldn't be right, because why shouldn't the owner of the house be paying effectively for the clear up anyway? But no, he's talking about the taxpayer covering this when it, you know, to allow for more profits. But there it is. Developers stockpiling plots with planning permission is the issue. Certainly what needs to happen is that they need to be told, you're buying this land for development, you develop it. And if you don't, we'll just take it off you. Absolutely. But there we go. How much do they get in party donations for trying to get this through? Well, there are a number of house builders that are known to be Tory donors, should we put it that way. There is a point at which you might argue they would just do this for purely ideological reasons. But I don't have evidence of this, but should we just present a bit of a hypothesis? So if anyone's paid attention to the like the recent news on political donations, you will know that Labour have been getting over £40 million in donations last year, and the Tories, it's a bit over 30 million. Labour have been getting well over 10 million more in donations than the Tories last year. Right. Obviously, we only know each year's when the results have come out. So you're the Conservatives, right? Your donations have plummeted. Okay. You can now be outspent by Labour, and people who can spend more for a campaign tend to win it because, if campaigns didn't work, people wouldn't spend so much money on it. So the Tories need more donations, right? They need more money. So then you have a situation where they come up with this random little thing quite quickly. Remember, this has not gone through the House of Commons. I keep emphasizing that. This has not gone through the House of Commons. This is just something that was thrown in as a late amendment in the House of Lords, right? MPs did not vote to support this. So you try and do this thing which allows house builders, who are one of your sort of traditional donors, to make more profits. Might that be a way to elicit those donations? So yeah, I do can't prove, but I do think very loudly that maybe this was an attempt to unlock some coffers. Lemon tea. I don't like tea. This is hot Vimto with honey. Although, because I don't have a sore throat anymore, I can drink a cold drink. I just need to keep hydrated. But there we go. So Ryan saying, how am I feeling? I feel absolutely fine. I may not sound it, but I do feel fine. But I have still got COVID. I am still testing positive. Given their belief in free market economics, why does the Tory government then go and give a lot of public money, which they say they can't afford for public services, to bail out private companies? Stupefying. Because they're hypocrites. It's really this simple. They use as a base free market economic principles, but ultimately what they want is wealth and power for themselves and the people that they consider themselves, their mates. That's what they're pirates. I mean, there's no other word for it. They're pirates. They're mobsters. In fact, mobsters is a better. Actually, no, pirates are just the same. They're criminals who like to pretend they've got this like code, like on mobster films. Oh, you got this code. You see, there's this code, and so that they pretend that they're moral people to excuse the fact that they do deeply immoral things. That's what the Tories are. They use free market economics to pretend they have some guiding principles, but it's not. It's an absolute nonsense. Every single time, it's a nonsense. They talk about free speech, and yet you wave an EU flag at the last night of the proms, and that flag must be banned. The same people. They're utter hypocrites. They are mobsters. They'll put the cost of sorting out on the taxpayer. Well, that's exactly what they've done. When they only announced this bill a few weeks ago, it was over summer, and journalists put it to Rishi Sunak or his spokesperson, I can't remember. This is going to cost the taxpayer an extra £140 million, isn't it? And they said, yeah. Like, what? Why? But there we go. Hang on, I'm just sorry. I was just trying to find a little comment up there to see if there was a reply. No, there wasn't a reply. Giving companies carte. Oh, so potato face. So you're now condemning Labour based on an article in the Sun. Oh dear, please behave. Giving companies carte blanche to do what the hell they like for donations, to my mind, is obvious corruption. It is. But politics is corrupt. That's the thing. You know how before summer, Rishi Sunak got into trouble because, in the budget, it's they're sort of boasting the fact, there's all this free childcare. You can get this extra free childcare. No, you can't, because there's nowhere with any provision for it. But of the few companies that could take part in this pilot, one was a company in which his wife has business interests, right? And I've forgotten the name of the company now, but a childcare company in which his wife has a business interest. And Rishi Sunak had not declared those interests. He hadn't published those interests. So there was a bit of an investigation. It said, He should have declared them. He did wrong, blah, blah, blah. So then in Parliament last week, Rishi Sunak is laughing while he's doing it. He's making a big thing about the fact, oh, just to be clear, I am declaring that I am of Indian heritage and my wife is Indian and we've got business interests in India to do with the Indian trade deal. Because he thinks all he has to do is say, oh, yeah, I've got these business interests. And then it's fine for him to carry on with conflicts of interest. It says absolutely fine to carry on with conflicts of interest. Like, no, it's not fine. The whole point of you publishing your interest is so that the public can say, oh, you've got business interests in this company. Oh, you've just given a load of public money to this company. I think you're corrupt. I'm not going to vote for you anymore. That's how it's supposed to work. But because the media don't point these things out, it sort of breaks down. Gary Arnold, £4 super chat. Thank you very much. Says, Phil, you could be Starmer's spad. No, I don't want to live in London or even work in London. He can have my advice for free if he wants it on Teams or something similar. Jack Sparrow will be disgusted at putting in the same group as the Tories. Nonetheless, that is what they're like. And Jack Sparrow is exactly the same as well. Absolute rogue, a murderer and a rogue, but pretend he lived by some sort of guiding principles. That is what Tories are. They are just pirates. If we're going to sort of say it's an insult to pirates, only because pirates put some effort in. The Tories just go around sitting in their gentlemen's club street, sipping tea and cackling over the finger pyramid of contemplation. Like Mr. Burns. If they are pirates, maybe an action man is Captain Hogwash, maybe. Yes, I that could actually stick. That could well. Labour will have to keep pushing it. That could well stick. But there we go. Skylar said, "Phil, I feel sick and tired of this. This cannot continue. The government isn't representing the will of the people. That oligarchy number 10 is making fools of us." Yes, but unfortunately, we have absolutely no power to force the issue. I still think it makes the most sense for the Conservatives if they're not going to go for it. Like, the longer they leave the election now, the worse it is. Obviously, they're not going to have. I really don't think they're going to have the election this year. Now, you would have called it by now, surely. But next, like late spring, early summer, that has to be their landing zone. If they don't go for it, then they really are fools. Because all the usual problems get worse. All the usual problems get worse in winter anyway. We're going to see that over the coming weeks. And once they get past, let's say they get to the point where it's too late to even hold the election in July. Next July, I see, has been the latest they would realistically want to hold it. Once they get past that point, they're trouble. They're in trouble. They're just going to lose more and more seats. Am I going to do a video on the carbon border adjustment mechanism? UK business going to have to comply with this EU rule in order to trade, another huge Brexit cost. Not specifically at this point, no. I've got so many other things now to do. The phone charge is much funnier. Won't rule out general election this year until conference will see how it goes. You can do. It's just that, like, the winter NHS crisis, it's still summer. The winter NHS crisis has already begun. Like, everything's a disaster. They wanted to wait for better economic news. They're not getting it. And also, if they call it at the conference, then it'll be in November. So then it's after people are sort of realizing that for a lot of people, the cost of energy is going up, even though the cap will not. The cap will actually be down a little bit. The actual cost of the energy will be going up. But there we go. Potato face. So your objection with Labour seems to be appealing to voters. You shouldn't be voting on what they say to Sun readers if you're not a Sun reader, right? Although if you've read it, you are a Sun reader. you should be reading what their policies are. It's really that simple. But it's up to you. Obviously, it's up to you. But there we go. Can I say, as a pirate, I'm offended by the comparison between me and the Tories? Tough. Vendetta just put a random comment about mayonnaise in there, as I know it was seen as well, by the way. So the Telegraph today hailing the fact that we've got rid of another EU rule that means we can now have campaigns that are like buy British food and stuff like that. Will be great for farmers. It's like, yeah, we always used to be able to have that, right? But I did little cheekily ask her, does she mean British produce like these British apples from Chile? I don't know whether anyone's seen it. There was a picture of a bag of apples from Waitrose. Waitrose, British jazz apples. It's got a Union flag on it, right? Oh, British apples, great. And then it says on the sticker, on the barcode, origin Chile. These fine British Chilean apples. You have to watch out for the old labelling. I had my first, I put on Twitter yesterday, I had my first not for EU meal. It was like a not for EU sticker on it. And there was a load of people going, oh, I won't take that. It'll be low standard. And this is what I said at the time. People will probably take it to mean lower standard food. In reality, it's not. It's just to get out of import controls in Northern Ireland. Martin Jones, £20 super chat. Thank you very much. Here's hoping you can persuade Labour to use social media more effectively, as we cannot afford to leave information flow to the mainstream media. No, indeed. And we keep saying, the main point we keep making is, so first of all, yes, when they're trying to access target voters through the mainstream media are applying their filters to it. But that can't be helped. Labour do indeed have to use the mainstream media for that audience. But they're missing out. Like, there's so many, like when we come to like the migrant plans, Starmer's asylum plans, for example, like the emphasis he's placing on it is the criminal gang side of it. And people are going, oh, but what about the refugees? It's like, yeah, safe routes for refugees. That's also part of it. He's just not shouting that through the loudhailer because you've got limited bandwidth with the mainstream media, and you've got to be very focused with your message. And the people who he's targeting through the mainstream media, what they want to hear about is dealing with the criminal gangs. They're not so interested in the safe routes. But that is still their policy. Whereas if they had other and because it's their policy, it's stated policy, they're not trying to hide it. They're just not shouting about it. But if they had other outlets that gave them access to other groups of voters that aren't interested in the mainstream media message, which they have, then that means they can get messages out to those people as well. And they can say, yeah, we're putting this emphasis in this outlet, but this is also our policy. And because it is official policy, not something they're whispering, because otherwise I wouldn't know about it. If it weren't officially announced, I wouldn't know about it. So yeah, they're missing a trick by not using social media to access the sorts of people who will watch YouTube but not read the Telegraph. Oh dear. It would probably help if Starmer wasn't the DPP that prosecuted the current CEO of News UK for phone hacking. No, it's hilarious. It's only a shame he didn't get her. Oh, we're saying only mentioned Mayo because the Times had a stupid banner about it in the picture behind me. Oh, yes. How posh is your Mayo? They always put things like that in. So why not just shout, we'll provide safe routes which will shut down the gangs? Surely not much more bandwidth saying that. No, absolutely. There is absolutely more bandwidth saying that. Because, first of all, that's bollocks. Who's going to believe that? Who believes that? It's nonsense. No. They're focusing their message onto those people. Everyone else should be getting there. I mean, at the same time, if anyone's interested in politics, they should always be reading the policies anyway, properly. But that is very much part of it. I mean, he's also said, just to be clear, that the Rwanda scheme will be completely dead and buried. That's a waste of money. In fact, I would actually suggest, in fact, I will suggest, what Labour do, right? When this is all done and dusted, and the point is, remember, the reason why Starmer's going on at this now is meeting Macron, he's meeting Trudeau, he wants to meet Biden, he'll be meeting other European leaders as well, so will David Lammy. In fact, when Keir Starmer goes to visit Macron next week, he's got with him David Lammy, Sue Gray, and I think Yvette Cooper as well, right? So all the people that are going to be involved. And he's doing this now, even though he's not going to be prime minister for like a year at least. He's doing it now so that he can get agreement. He can work out what can he get agreement on with other countries, cross-border agreement, so that when he is prime minister, he can go, right, I already know that I can enact this plan now, so he can get it all going. So imagine a scenario in a couple of years. So Labour have dealt with, I don't know whether it'd be 2 or 3 years, by the way, I don't know what time it'll take, but Labour have dealt with these channel crossings, right? So they're basically not a thing anymore. Nigel Farage will have to go to faking them like he did in 2019. There's the backlog has been massively scaled down again. What Labour can do at that point is go, right, we've actually now solved this problem. The Tories kept saying they were going to solve it, but it just kept getting worse. We've now solved it, right? Provably solved it. Here are the figures. And this is what it cost us to do it. And then what they can do is they can get the costs for the Rwanda scheme, the Bibi Stockholm barge, and everything else that the Tories have spent unnecessarily. And they'll have all that information because they will have the government records at that point. They are the government. They can work out how much money the Tories wasted on actually just making the problem worse. And they can play the Tories at their own game. You know how, like, I will say things like, the TUC at the moment are suggesting, well, we should just nationalise, what is it now? I forget. Is it energy? And they reckon they can do it for 90 billion, which, by the way, they can't. They've done this before where they presented a figure and then it's like, so how have you worked that out then? Oh, we're not telling you how we've worked it out. Oh, funny. Okay. But they reckon they can do it for 90 billion, which apart from anything else is a stupid amount of money. So, but what would happen if they did that? And let's say it wasn't, or whatever it happens to be, that would obviously go into the national debt because it can't come out of the budget. It's not enough. You can't get out of the budget. So that would just be extra borrowing, right? That would be forever known as Labour's debt pile, and you would see no benefit before the next election from the nationalisation. So the Tories would say Labour have just cost you that for nothing. That Labour can do the same thing to the Tories. They can point to this billions of pounds. Won't be 90 billion pounds, but they can point to billions of pounds and say the Tories spent that on a concentration camp in Rwanda, a plague ship, and various other things. They tried to. They can even play on the Scampton RAF thing, where the buried remains of a dog are going to have to be moved, and everyone's losing their minds over it. They can even play on that, and we had to like desecrate a beloved animal, grave plot, all for the Tories to make their culture wars. Whereas we solved the whole problem, and it cost the Tories this much, and it cost us this much. They can say that as well. But anyway, sort of run out of time. I'll just go through the last few. Anyway, I don't know. There's been various things going on about Asylum now. It's my fault, probably. Lest we forget, whenever Labour announces a decent policy in the media, the Tories tend to nick it anyway. So Labour keeping things close to its chest shouldn't surprise. At the moment, they're not. I mean, they're now. It's basically, you can consider that the general election campaign has begun. We don't know when it's going to be, but the general election campaign has basically begun. The Tories are trying it. In fact, I think I saw someone in the comments mentioning that their local Tory MP is really giving up. They are. They've been told they've been told to be on an election footing. They've been told to get ready. So it might, and that is because I still don't think the Tories have a firm date in mind. I think they're going to need to be reactive. They're going to wait for the headwinds to sort of die down a little bit, and then to go, right, this is our landing zone. Get that. But if you can think of now as being in a general election campaign, so they will start to announce policies, but they are going to focus in the mainstream media on the policies that will appeal to the target voters that they are reaching through the mainstream media. But anyway, there we go. Thanks very much anyway for watching. Don't forget to click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe as well. And there'll be details on how to join Patreon if you wish to do that as well in the description below. As well as I've put a link, I think, to the votes in Parliament last night, which is related to this, where basically only Conservatives voted for the government, including, of course, Charlotte Owen, who is now known as, what's she known as now? Owen of Alderley Edge. Doesn't even have a photo in there yet. But there we go. Thanks very much for coming on, everyone. I seem to have got away without a lot of coughing. Oh, there's live show. Sorry, I've really forgotten the live show. So there will hopefully be a link in the description below as well. When the Labour conference is on in early October, we're going to be doing 2 fringe events. One is outside of the Labour conference. So if you're in Liverpool on Monday, the 9th of October, I believe, between 4 and 5 p.m. at the Camp and Furnace. And then there'll be like Q&As after that as well. And then there'll be another fringe event inside the conference for anyone who happens to be going on the Tuesday. But have a good evening and or day. You've got to get through the rest of the day before you get to your evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.